Welcome back to Undercover. We're here again with Dave Mustaine of the legendary Megadeth. Now, Dave, you're back with another album, Endgames. After 12 albums, it sounds to me like music is still coming as naturally as it ever has been to you. Is that the case? Is it still just as easy for you to write a riff?
Well, it's as fun, as far as being as easy. I think that when you've written so many riffs, you tend to forget, and just got to make sure you don't repeat yourself. There's a lot of bands that repeat themselves. I've got over 100 songs, and it's very possible with as many riffs are in each song that I've written a riff and showed up in a song. The funny thing is, like, Sean had submitted a song for the new record, and I was listening to it and I thought, wow, something sounds different. I don't like this song, and so I picked up my guitar and I figured out what it was. He had put one of the riffs that I'd written on Take No Prisoners in his song, and I said, dude, that riff's from Take No Prisoners. He goes, no, it's not. And I said, yes, it is, listen. And he goes, oh, okay, well, maybe it is.
So, do you ever find, I mean, you've been around for more than 20 years now, do you ever find that happening in other bands? Who might be doing it completely accidentally.
You mean copying me or copying themselves?
No, I mean, do you ever hear sort of a Megadeth riff in there, or an influence that's really obvious? Not to say they're intentionally doing it, but
no,
it might be
I wouldn't say that, because I'll get scalded by everybody. He's such an arrogant asshole. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. There's a lot of bands that repeat themselves. Are there bands that steal from us? They'd have to, because we stole from somebody else. The only guy that's ever said an original word in the universe is Adam, and as far as guitar is concerned, it all goes back to Robert Johnson. I mean, you take heavy metal, thrash came from heavy metal. You take rock and roll, well, heavy metal came from rock and roll. And what is rock and roll? It's a slang from the Negroes that were in America. That's what they called them back then. And it was a slang for having sex. They would rock and roll in bed. And they were saying that the music that Robert Johnson did was rocking and rolling. It was sexy. So it morphed into what commonly now is Megadeth, and it all goes back to the same nucleus.
Yeah, right.
So would someone have stolen me? Well, they would have to have, because it's just part of being a musician. You borrow.
And hopefully
it's only 12 notes anyways, man.
Exactly. Yeah, I suppose every combination has probably been done.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that there's probably a lick that I've done that has been from some classical artist somewhere, or there's been a chord progression I've done that some punker's written, but because my tastes are so extreme and bizarre, I don't think anybody would be able to really ascertain where all of the inspirations come from, because, I'll listen to stuff like Merciful Fate back in the day versus... listening at the same period, I would be listening to Aztec Camera. I mean, who listens to that stuff? Who listens to both of those things? And there's a lot of really interesting stuff that inspires me musically. Watching people like George Benson play, seeing people like Ted Nugent play the same kind of guitar and how different it sounds. Watching people like Jeff Healey, who was a blind guy we lost recently, and guys like Jose Feliciano. I think Jose kind of took it easy. I think Jeff Healey kicks serious ass. It's so interesting when you're part of the music industry, what you look at. It's like these people who are coaches. They see things that we would never see.
So do you take influences like Jose Feliciano and George Benson and actually sort of learn from them, or is it just something that you listen to? But when you're writing an album, you'll listen to metal.
I listen to all kinds of stuff, and neither one of those gentlemen have influenced my guitar playing. George is definitely good enough, but it's not in the right vein. It's not in the right vein. It's not in coming from the right place either. And as far as Jose Feliciano is concerned, he's a classical flamenco style guitar player, so I'm sure that there's a lot of merit to what he does. But I never really got into the whole nylon string guitar. Acoustic guitar is so hard to play anyway, and nylon strings are probably the hardest because the guitar is very unforgiving. Most of the guitars that are made that have nylon strings on them are crap. The strings are about 2 inches off of the neck, and you need to use C clamps to even do a chord on there if your hands aren't like a fiddler crab, man. You'll never be able to hold on to that thing, you know.
But almost everyone starts learning guitar on those ridiculous guitars.
And that's why most people quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the misconception too is that just because you can play a guitar, that doesn't mean you're a musician. And just because you're a musician doesn't mean that you're in a band. You know, there's people who are in a band, and there's a couple guys who can play music, but they're not musicians. You know, and the one guy in the band that's a musician has to carry the weight of the guys who just know how to play music. You know what I mean? And you get in a situation like with us, where you've got so many people that are talented in so many different areas. It pretty much just really opens up the floodgate of what you can do. Talent-wise, how far can we go? How far can we push Chris? How fast can we make Sean and James play?
Do they? Do you drive them mad just sitting there in the rehearsal room saying, "Let's do faster, faster, faster"?
I don't think so, because James may not like it, because he's from an old school kind of approach. You know, kind of a more rock thing with his bass playing. You know, he played with Ozzy, he played with David Lee Roth, he played obviously with White Lion and stuff like that, which I think really helped him, because he's got credibility from doing stuff with Zach and the BLS, and he's also got the melody that came from working with White Lion. Now, I don't really admire his past in White Lion, because when I met my wife, she had a picture of that stupid band in her bedroom. And I felt like saying something to James when I first saw him. Well, if you weren't in White Lion, you'd be in the band, but since my wife likes you, you're out of here. No, but it's cool. We all came together for different reasons, and it works really well right now.